Hi everyone, VortexTCG here. EB01 Eternal Nexus has finally been released, our first extra booster set of the Gundam card game, and I think it is a pretty good set, but I think it's hard to begin where to start with a set like this, especially as it is very enclosed and doesn't really mix well with the rest of the cards that we currently have in the game. I mean, G Generation on its own probably has around 100 cards, including EB01 and ST10. So there's a lot of cards here, is what I'm saying. But I think the majority of players can easily say that the best thing about the G Generation cards is that they have really good top end. So in today's deck profile, I'm going to show off a deck that uses probably some of the best top end cards that G Generation has access to in both green and blue. This is my blue-green G Generation ramp deck. So let's get into the deck profile. All right, so here we are with the deck profile. I'm going to go through all the cards and the reason why we're playing them. So let's begin with the level 3s. Those beginning with Gundam Lfrith. This is kind of just a level 3 searcher when it's linked. Spoiler alert, G Generation loves to link, so the majority of things in this deck will just say link with this card, essentially. So this one allows you to search the top 3 cards of your deck and add a level 3 G Generation units card. That is kind of like a sub-theme of this deck, because we do play a lot of level 3s in our deck, just because they are pretty good for early game and it leads us up to our ramp turn in the level 5. So it is pretty good, allows us to get some search, allows us to continue our game plans. So we currently play 4 Gundam Lfrith. Then we have 4 of the Gundam EZ8. This is your level 3 for free, but it's green. One of the good things about this card is that it just gets through the blockers really. Obviously stops from like Rick Diaz, for example, and the Geplant in this set. But when it's like Lfriths and flats, it becomes really awkward for your opponent because you're going to get rid of their unit and you can't get rid of it on the way back as well, unless they're playing like a ping variant. But most decks, if they're playing those kind of cards, usually are playing, you know, green, blue, or purple, but it's usually Destiny. So this essentially just allows it to stay on the field and is another threat. So yeah, we play 4 of it in the main. It's level 3, so it's searchable with so all the good stuff. Then we have 4 Tornado Gundam. Now, this is a pretty generic card. We see this quite a lot with a lot of archetypes where they have like a level 3, 2 cost, 3/3 that links with anything in the archetype essentially. But this time it is just G Generation and links with any G Generation trait pilot. That means it has a lot of good flexibility within the deck, which allows us to, you know, have a lot more plays than we would have in a normal archetypal deck. So being able to play a 3/3 obviously on its own, not that bad. When you pilot it with one of the pilots in the deck, it has more functions to it. So it can be like a way to get rid of a blocker, it could be a way to get breach, or it could be a way to get breach again essentially in this deck. So we play 4 of it in the main, searchable through Lfrith, all the good stuff. Then we have 2 Gouf. Now this card is a bit interesting, and the reason why I'm playing this is because it's a bit of a meta call. Currently in the meta, we're still seeing Blurple and 1 Year War be very popular, and it's going to get more popular with this card essentially because it kind of just slows down the other deck. The reason why we're playing this in our version is because there are ways to get rid of our level 3s quite easily with ping, because if you're swinging with a level 3, chances are it's only going to have like 1 or 2 HP left when you're done with it. In this case, your opponent has to find an additional answer, right? So they have to be the one that swings into this, or they have to have a command card that does the damage, right? Because units can't ping this essentially. So, you know, adapts, gun tanks, anxious, adapts, you know, all that stuff, it can't affect this card. So it is very powerful in that regard, but we're only playing it 2 because, you know, you're only going to see those decks sometimes. Maybe, depending on your local scene, you might bump this up to 4, but the fact it can't link as well is a bit of a downer about this card, so we currently play it 2 in the deck. Rounding off the level 3s, we have Lfrith Thorn. Now, this one is something that is quite interesting. If you watch my level 3 deck, I did not play this card because of one reason and one reason alone. It's because it required a support trait pilot, which in a level 3 variant was quite difficult because the two main pilots that you want to play are Itu and the Siva. So those are both attack traits, so this card didn't really find much of a place in. But as we are forced to play a support trait pilot in this deck, this card gets more value. If you play another G generation unit that is level 3, this card gains Breach 1 for the turn. This just means that you're able to get some additional trades and get additional value by swinging through into your opponent's shield area. So I think this card is pretty decent, but overall, you know, it's still kind of like a bit of an card. But unfortunately, at the level 3 range, there aren't that many good units that also link with generically. So we're kind of pushed into playing Lfrith form, and to be honest, with the amount of level 3s that we do have in our deck, I believe it's like 16, we should have no difficulty trying to get this effect off. So we play 2 of it in the deck. Going into our main ramp card now, we have Build Strike Gundam Full Package EX. This is your main ramp card. Essentially has Breach 4, which is a nice little combat trick that allows you to go through some shields as well, but also allows you to place a rested resource if there are 2 or more G generation unit cards in your trash. This allows us to speed into our future turns, going into like the level 6s and later on the level 8s. Being able to get the jump on your opponent on resources, obviously very strong in this game, and this unit alongside its pilot combination is very offensive. So I actually like this card quite a lot, and we play 4 of it in the main to help speed us into the late game. Then we have free Gundam Barbatos Lupus Rex. Now this card might seem a little bit slow, but actually I think this is an incredible card in the archetype. It allows you to link with any attack trait pilot, which the majority of them are. It has repair 2, so it can stay on the field. A 3/5 stat line, which is pretty darn good, and it has once per turn effect. If it gets recovered HP, choose 1 rested enemy unit, deal 1 damage to it. This way you're just able to constantly apply pressure to the units and force the traits into your own hands. But in combination with pilots, this stat line can go crazy. There's +2/+1 pilots in here, so it can go to like a 5/6 in stats, but also it has +1/+2, which means it can go to a 4/7, and 7 health is a huge amount currently in the card game. There's only a few decks that are able to actually do that quite often. It's mainly stuff like Wing, so being able to put it on here is pretty darn good. So I play 3 of it in the main. Then we have free Tallgeese Ⅱ. Now this is an interesting card, and to be honest, I have been thinking about removing it because I do think it can benefit your opponent a little bit more, but I am still trying to test it, and I'm going to be testing it at locals to see if it works well. But essentially this is a 5/4 level 6 5 cost that can link with any G generation trait pilot, and then it has the development effect that allows you to exile 2, and if you do, you get to place an EX resource for both you and your opponents. It's an interesting card, but the main reason why we play this is because it helps us, you know, go into our late game cards quicker, at least 1 turn quicker, and sometimes that is the deal breaker in those scenarios. But it's also important to note that if you're playing against stuff like aggro, for example, you know, they're going to be having their whole entire hand out by that time, probably only have like 1 or 2 cards left in their hand. So a card that essentially just means that they can't destroy it is important, because the Durin pair is that if your opponent has an EX resource, this unit can't receive battle damage from enemy units that are level 5 or lower. That just means that it's hard to trade into this guy for those aggro decks, and even for those like mid-rangey decks that we see quite often as well now, with, you know, stuff like the Ligue Militaire, for example. So I think this card is actually, it's pretty good on paper. I just need to see it like actually in a tournament setting to see if it works to the way that I want it to. But overall, I think it's an interesting card, helps you speed up to your level 8s, and that's pretty good. So we play 3 of it in the main. Then we get on to one of our boss monsters in the High Nu Gundam. This is a level 8 7 cost, which can link with any G generation trait pilot, deploy, essentially just rest a unit, which is insane, and then during link, if there are 3 or more other rested units in play, set this unit as active. What this essentially just means is that you're able to double swing, kind of similar to like a suppression check, really, and that is very strong. I've played a white base team with gun cannons, and the restand has always been incredibly strong when I've been able to do it. So the fact that this is just a more flexible version. Obviously it's more expensive, but being able to link with any G-Generation trait and also just being able to rest pretty much anything in the deck, I think is pretty good as a late game unit. And it's something that your opponent has to deal with, because if you don't, then you're just able to restand every turn. So we play 3 of it in the main. Finally, for units, we have Gundam Exia EX. This is your other late game unit, and it kind of goes well with the high new Gundam. It allows you to have Breach 5, which is obviously good, links with an attack trait, and when during paired, at the end of your turn, you may destroy this unit. And if you do, you deploy 3 Gundam Exia tokens that are 2/2 in stats. And that is insane. I mean, this card pretty much outside of the pilot that you might have essentially just means that you're able to get, what, 12, 11 in stats, which is insane before the pilot adds in as well. So yeah, this card is an incredibly good late game card. Now, obviously there is stuff like Wing in the format, which loves this kind of stuff, but I think the benefits outweigh the negatives in this situation, and you're able to pivot into other things if need be in those matchups. So yeah, I think this card is actually very good. I think it's probably one of the best G-Generation cards that we have access to, and so we play 3 of it in the main. Going on to pilots, we have 4 Meir Siva. This is a level 4 1 cost, +1/+2, and essentially allows you to give one of your friendly G-Generation units Breach 1 for this turn. Now, it's important to note that this isn't just the unit that you pilot with. It can be any unit that can get Breach 1. So if you already have a really strong pairing on the field, you're able to give it Breach 1 and make it more of a threat. But for the most part, yeah, of course, you're just going to put it on top of it and then hope for it that it works. But yeah, this card in combination with a lot of the deck just makes it, you know, very sticky, because the +2 health matters a lot. Stuff like the Lfrith just being a 3/4 in stats, getting Breach 1 and a search is pretty darn good, I would say. So we play 4 of it as our, I guess, main attack pilot of the deck. Then we have 4 Reiji. This is the support traits pilot of the deck, and I actually think this pilot is actually really good. I just wish it had better links, essentially. When it's paired, you get to choose one of your friendly G-Generation units. Most of the time, it's obviously going to be the full strike, the build strike, whatever it's called, and essentially allows you to attack an active blocker as its attack target. So this is just a nice way of getting rid of some of the things that your opponent may have, while also maintaining your field and also destroying their shield/bases. So yeah, it's pretty good to say the least, and we play 4 of it in the deck. Rounding off the pilots, we have Rondo here, a +2/+1 pilot. Essentially, it's kind of similar to the Meir, but the difference here is that if it has repair, it gets Breach 1. There is a base, and there's obviously the Lupus Rex that allows you to have repair, so you get Breach 1 anyways, but it's important to note that this you do have to have repair, essentially. So it's a bit worse, obviously. It's still an attack trait pilot. There might be other pilots that you can play in this situation. I was thinking of the Cecile, I think it is, which allows you to return the card to the top of the deck, because this deck likes pilots, so I can see that working out. But at the moment, I'm currently playing 2, but you can look at alternatives here as well. Then we have unlocking the development diagram. Now, this is essentially a show resolve / unforeseen overflowing affection in 1. Allows you to essentially pay 4 to draw 2, or you could discard a G-Generation unit card to make this level 2 cost, and then it becomes an overflowing affection. The flexibility is actually very strong in this deck, I would say. Unfortunately, with G-Generation, there just isn't that much draw. It's the reason why we're playing stuff like the Lfrith to find out our level 3s, and also this kind of card to help us find the late game pieces that we need. Blue, for all of its problems in the G-Generation archetype, is probably got one of the best cards in it, and it's this draw 2 card. So we're kind of forced to pivot into blue because of this card for the most times, so we do play 4 of it in the deck. Then we have Ptolemaios 2. This is essentially a Peace Million, but only for your friendly green G-Generation units, unfortunately. So for a lot of the deck, it's not going to matter as much, but for stuff like the Tallgeese, for example, the Build Strike, and stuff like the Lfrith Form, 4/3s, and all that kind of stuff, like, this card does matter a little bit. Getting the 2 HP is obviously huge, because it just means that your opponent has to deal with it while you haven't really taken much much of a blow as well. The only problem, however, is that it is 2 costs, so it's hard to combine this alongside other cards like the Build Strike, like the level 3s, so it is a bit of a weird card at times. So essentially what you do is that if you have the field already, you play it and then you get the value that way. So you're kind of forced into that kind of play style, unfortunately, with this card, so we play only 2 of it in the deck. Rounding off the deck, we have Kycilia, Zabi, and Gwazine. I'm probably just pronounced that wrong, but this is kind of a similar issue that we have with the other base, but it's a bit more flexible, I think. Once per turn, when a friendly G-Generation unit links, it gets repair 2 during this turn. Obviously, this combines incredibly well with the Rondo, but I mean, it's kind of similar to the Ptolemaios, just you have to have the link instead of it being just a generic green unit. Unfortunately, with G-Generation, there isn't just like a good staple base. They all kind of like focus on their own archetypes or colors, for example. So there'll be ones that heal. There'll be like a level 3 one. There'll be a restand for white, but we're not playing white. So it's a bit of an awkward situation for the bases in G-Generation, but I think these 2 are definitely the best. So this is the reason why we are playing 2 Kycilia Zabi as well in the deck. And that was the deck profile. Overall, I do think there are things that you could definitely tinker with this deck. The good thing about G-Generation is that, well, you have 100 cards to essentially play with, so you can mix and match a bunch of stuff and make a G-Generation deck to your liking because there is plenty of support that is available to you. I think it's quite clear that the late game of G-Generation is very strong, especially with cards like the High Nu and the Gundam Exia. I think these 2 cards are going to make a huge deal for G-Generation if they were to make a competitive splash. But that's not all about this deck. Later on, I'm going to be taking this to a local, so if you're interested in that gameplay and seeing how the deck goes, please do like and subscribe to the channel so you're updated when that video does come out. But yeah, if you have access to EB01, you might as well try this deck. I think it's going to be a decent amount of fun, and overall I think that if you get to the late game, you should be in relatively good hands. But what do you think about the deck profile? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.